So sometimes the best laid plans just don't work out in your favor. A couple of weeks ago, I thought, let's get ready for cold and flu season. We're going to have the kids here for Christmas, and I just want to make sure with airplanes and everybody traveling that everybody stays healthy. So I thought, all right, fine. We'll make some fire cider, keep us all healthy leading up to it, and then we'll make some chicken soup just in case anybody gets sick. Well, it didn't work out so well because I was at Kroger day before yesterday, and turns out there's a little recall notice from the carrots that I bought that went into my chicken soup. So now instead of helping us feel better and killing Colton virus, I'm actually giving us hot virus if we eat these. And that's not exactly what I had in mind. So E. coli, I believe, is killed at 165 degrees when it's cooked. The pressure canner gets up to 242 degrees. So in theory, the E. coli has been killed. But in theory, it's just not enough to get me over the hump to say, yeah, I'm going to eat this, or yeah, I'm going to serve it to my husband or my kids. I'm just not going to do that. So the chicken soup's going to go away. You'll recall from that video, I was using this cutting board. So when we looked at the sequence of that, I did the chicken soup first. So the carrots were one of the first things on my cutting board. I had to look at that uncut footage to see what exactly in this session may have come into contact with something that had touched the carrots. Because as far as I'm concerned, if it's touched the carrots, it is suspect and it needs to be not something I'm going to give my family. So the chicken soup is clearly out because the carrots are inside there. When I brought out the chicken, I brought out a separate cutting board that's in the regular footage. The chicken did not touch this board, which had the carrots on it. So that part is fine. I had to go back to the raw uncut footage to see that, yes, I had indeed stopped. I'd washed my knife. I'd washed my hands after preparing this. So I didn't have any concerns about the knife having cross-contamination or my hands having cross-contamination. And I was using a separate cutting board on the chicken. So that was okay. However, the reason I used that separate cutting board for the chicken was because I knew I would be cutting more vegetables on this board as the last project that I did. That was the fire cider. So after doing all of the chicken jars, remember I did some rotisserie chicken jars in that one as well. After doing those, I moved the chicken board and I came back, cleaned up, and we did the fire cider. But here's the thing. I turned off my camera, so I know I washed my hands, washed my knife. What I don't know is whether or not I washed this board thoroughly since I had done the carrots. I am guessing, because I was going from vegetables to vegetables, that I only wiped it down. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes this whole jar suspect because all these vegetables were cut on the same board. So again, this is not something I'm going to take. It's not something I'm going to give my family. So I'm out of fire cider now as well. So I think I'm going to have to come up with a plan B. And when I take these back to the store, which they're going back today, I think I'll take a look and see what else I can find. And maybe we'll do some more ferments to help keep us healthy through the holidays. So we'll come back, and by the end of this video, you'll see what I've done to combat that. All right, now let's talk about the second thing that has come up to thwart my plans here. As you may remember, each and every time we do the pantry challenge in January and February, I grow lettuce downstairs in my grow room, and I start that lettuce mid-November. Well, I couldn't start it this year because it turns out that we have excessive radon down there. Now, we have a radon remediation system, but from walking over the vapor barrier, we poked miniature holes in it because it's just gravel underneath. And I noticed this maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago, can't remember now, that everything I started to grow in, I know when it was when I was growing all of my plant starts for my fall garden. So all my broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, whatever, it would start to grow up and then it would die. started to grow up, and then it would die. Started some lettuce. It started to grow up, and then it died. And I thought, well, what on earth? Have I forgotten how to grow? Something is going on down here. And something struck me, and I thought, you know what? Let's just do a little radon test. So I did a radon test, one of those things you buy from Amazon. I think it was by First Alert. I did that. The results came back at 11. 2 is supposed to be acceptable, right? So that was no good. And then a friend brought over an electronic radon test that is supposed to be much more reliable than something you can buy off Amazon at a charcoal test kit that you send off. Well, we were still over 10. I'll put those test results up here. So that's not good. We called a couple of companies, and they came out and they found these little pinpricks in the vapor barrier. And so unfortunately, the only way to fix that is to lay down a new vapor barrier. Now, getting someone in to do that during the holidays seems to have been quite a chore. We've been on the schedule now for several weeks, and it's actually supposed to happen, at least start happening on December 4th. I'm excited that that's finally going to get done because I miss spending time down there. But I clearly can't start my lettuce until everything is clear down there. I don't want the lettuce to die. I don't want any issues from radon. I'm just not taking any chances there. So there are a couple of things I can do to make sure I have some greens available for the pantry challenge. Let's say that the vapor barrier, and they're shooting in foam and they're sealing all kinds of cracks, and they're just kind of redoing the whole thing, putting in a bigger system as well, or a bigger fan, I don't know. Anyway, of the radon remediation system. They're really going to do it upright because you know how much time I spend down there between the grow room and the canning pantry, right? I don't want to take any excessive risk down there. So let's say that they start that on December 4th and we get the all clear down there by December 15th. I have 2 weeks before the pantry challenge starts, so I can clearly grow microgreens. I can always do sprouts up here. That's not a big deal. Those are only 5 days, but most of my microgreens I can get done in 7 to 14 days. So I will have some kind of green something during the pantry challenge. So I'm excited about that. The other thing I have done is that when I pulled out all of my summer garden this year, I decided to do a cover crop. But I didn't want to just do like a hairy vetch and clover and something that added nutrition to the soil but offered no nutrition for us. So I thought I would do an edible cover crop. In fact, I did a lot of different cover crops down there. So we'll go down and take a look, but you'll see that I have baby kale, I have spinach, I have lettuces, I have parsley, I have cilantro, I have mustard greens, arugula, beets. I have all kinds of fun things that have been providing for the past couple of weeks great salads for us. So that has been, so far, a really good idea. Now, will it last until January? Kind of depends what our December weather can look like. One year we may get 9 inches of snow in December and have a totally white snowed-in Christmas. Another year, we may still be having 60-degree weather. So it just depends what happens. As long as we can avoid a big snowfall, I'm probably still going to have some outdoor greens by January. Fingers crossed, right? So I can also start some lettuce down below, down in the crawl space, mid-December, and that should be ready to start picking early in February. So I'm hoping that I can carry myself through by kind of patchworking all of the greens because we do like to have access to fresh greens. All right, let me go show you what is going on in the garden, and I'll show you what's been feeding us salads for the last couple of weeks. Let me show you what I've done in the garden this year in terms of edible cover crops. We'll go through each of the beds. Ignore my poor flowers that froze to death last night. I have kale. I have mustard. Over on this side, I have beets. These are red beets, so I don't know that you could technically see them here. I have lettuce. And then I have this whole side over here is cilantro. And then, of course, I have garlic and shallots up in the front. So I have lots of little garlic chives that I could snip there. In this bed, I have the only 2 cabbages that survived the grow room. So they're not doing great. They've been in the bed for quite some time, and they're not very big. So I don't know that I'm really going to get any cabbages this year. But this lettuce bed is doing much better. And then I have some Swiss chard, still very small, but it's coming up just fine. My spinach is starting to really fill in, so I'm excited about that. Spinach takes a long time to get going, but I do think I'm going to have some real spinach before we get a big snowfall. And then in this back bed, this is parsley. I have a really good stand of lettuce here in this one. You can see I have some potatoes that were obviously left in this bed. Those are not going to make it. I'm surprised they've made it through the first couple of freezes we've had already. And then I have a ton of arugula down here. I love arugula salads. So far, we have had a ton of salads out of these beds. And I'm really hoping that much of it will last us through January. It'd be great if it lasted through February as well. But if I can at least get through January, I should have some real grown-up lettuce by February in the grow room. So I'm going to snip a little salad, and we'll start getting ready for dinner tonight. I like to take some of everything each time. And I try to snip from different places. As it's growing in, I'll snip all the way across the bed so that there's more room for the rest of it to fill in. And now that this is so grown up, I can just snip anywhere I want to. And it'll do just fine. So I'll get some mustard. Oh, you can see I have some dill growing here as well. That I did not plant, but I am happy to have it anyway. Maybe kale. Then try to leave the oak leaves. My spinach is not big enough to cut yet, but I don't think it'll be too long before I can do that. Let's take some parsley. I want this parsley to get a little bit bigger, and then I want to do a big freeze-drying batch of it. Same thing with the cilantro. I love to put the fresh herbs in our salad. All right, it's coming along. Get some lettuce and some arugula. The primary goal was to cover the beds and then give me green matter to turn over in the beds and add some nutrition back to them in the spring. So I wanted it planted very thickly. And so what I didn't use new seed for this. I used old seed. So I picked out all of my older seed and I just spread it over each of the beds. I've done the same thing on the other side, but I did that later. So it's just now starting to germinate over there. Figuring maybe something will make it through. And you can see that we have bowl after bowl after bowl of salad just in this bed. I'm going to get a little bit of cilantro and then we'll call it done. All right. That's our dinner salad. Not bad, right? All for protecting the beds through the winter. So I'm hoping that's going to end up being something I want to do year after year. But the jury's still out until we see what happens next spring. The carrots are now back at Kroger, and I found a couple of great looking cabbages. So I'm going to make some sauerkraut. Just a very simple sauerkraut that we can eat every day. So I want just basic flavors in this. It's going to be super simple. One of the easiest ferments I think you can do. I'm going to pull off a couple of these good-looking outer leaves here so that I have something to put on top once we get it into the jar. And I will show you that when we get there. But I do sometimes forget to pull what I'm going to need. So let's do that now. Oh, my world. That's a big leaf. That ought to be plenty for us. So I have about 3 pounds of green cabbage. And then in a separate ferment, I'm going to do a 2-pound purple cabbage or red cabbage. All right. Let's get, I kind of want that leaf. I think I'm going to take this one as a cover as well. So as I recall, and it has been a while since I made sauerkraut, but as I recall, it's about 2 pounds of cabbage per quart jar. I have a couple of quarts and a pint out. We'll see how good my memory is. You can cut your cabbage any way you like. You can dice it. I just like to slice mine thin. To me, that's what sauerkraut looks like, but whatever suits you is just fine. You could also add things to your sauerkraut. As I mentioned, I'm not going to do it today, but you could add carrots, you could add onions, you can add garlic, you can add ginger. Often I'll add apples with the purple cabbage, and I really enjoy that. But the thing about apples is that they will make the ferment go faster, so that can be a very good thing. But to me, they also get a little mushy faster than I would like. So I'm not going to do any apples today because I would like to see this last through the holiday season, but we'll see. We haven't had sauerkraut in a while, so it may go pretty quickly. I may end up having to do another batch. So super clean hands, super clean jars, weights, pickle pipes, everything is freshly washed, hot soapy water, knife, everything. Cutting board has been sterilized. So that is fine. No more concerns about that. I'm going to get this all into the bowl. And then this is a dry brine. So that means all we're going to add is salt. And eventually over the next hour and a half or so, we are going to massage the salt into the cabbage. And the cabbage will release its own moisture, making its own brine to ferment itself. So this is going to look like a gigantic bowl of cabbage. But it'll break itself down as it starts to create the brine. I use 1 tablespoon of salt per 2 pounds of cabbage. So for this 3 pounds of cabbage in the green variety, I'm going to use 1.5 tablespoons of salt. When you choose a salt, you just want to make sure that you have one that has not been bleached and does not have anti-caking agents in it, because that will mess with your ferment. I am using Redmond's real salt, but Himalayan pink salt or Celtic salt or whatever you want to use that does not have anything other than salt in it is just fine. All right, there's our green cabbage. It's not very green, quite frankly, but that's all right. That's the green cabbage. Let's do the purple cabbage or red cabbage. What do you call it? Purple cabbage, red cabbage? It's like a purple onion. I always call it a purple onion, but I think technically it's a red onion. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. There we go. So this one is going in a separate bowl. Know that it's going to turn everything pink. So I don't want to put it in my green cabbage. You could. You absolutely could. So we pull a leaf off in the beginning so that we have something to hold down the rest of the cabbage as it ferments, because it's going to be on the counter fermenting for at least a couple of weeks. Pop the core out. Let's see if I can do a better job. No, I can't. Okay, all right. That ought to be good for us. This is so pretty. This one is a 2-pound cabbage, so it'll get 1 tablespoon of salt. Now I'm going to toss the salt in here, and then I'm going to let it sit for 30 minutes to an hour or so. Let that salt help the cabbage release some of its water. And we'll come back and give it some squeezes, and then maybe let it sit a little bit longer, depending how far along it is, before it gets to the point where there is enough brine to put it in the jar and have the brine be able to cover the cabbage. So that's the goal. We want enough brine, self-made brine here, to cover the cabbage so that we don't have any type of mold or bacteria enter. Now we need salt, and then we'll toss that a little bit. Wash my hands. I had cabbage everywhere. All right, let's get the salt in. I'm going to do 1.5 tablespoons in the green and 1 tablespoon in the red, purple, whatever we're calling it. What I'm going to do is toss it just a bit. More cabbage. All right, here's my tablespoon in the red cabbage. I don't really need to do a lot of massaging at this point. What I mainly want to do is make sure that all the cabbage gets covered in salt, so that the salt is working on everything while it's sitting here. Okay. That looks awesome. Now let's, can you see my mess? All right, this hand, I'm going to try not to touch anything. We're going to do 1.5 tablespoons in this 3 pounds of cabbage. So let me toss this around a bit. It's quite the mess. All right, go ahead and get another 1/2 tablespoon out. Kind of ridiculous how much cabbage is jumping out of the bowl. I'll get this mixed in. All right. That one is now done as well. So these are going to sit here for 30 minutes, maybe an hour. I'm going to clean up my mess, and then we'll come back and we'll really get in and start massaging these and making sure that the cabbage is starting to break down and release its moisture. All right, it has been almost an hour. I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up on camera or not, but I can see that it is doing a good job breaking down already. So we are all cleaned up, hands are clean, but I'm going to glove up for this one because I want to be able to use both hands. At the beginning, I just used the left hand, but I have a tiny little cut on this hand. Okay. Can you see the moisture on the cabbage? That's exactly what we're looking for. That means the salt is doing its job. It is pulling that moisture out of the cabbage. Still plenty of crunch. but it's so much softer and so much less in volume than it was before. Let's see if we're creating any brine down in here now. A little bit. See if you can see that. You see the brine we're creating down in there? We're going to need a lot more than that. So I just like to squeeze it and flip it. Squeeze it and flip it. Also use a kraut pounder, which I will use here in a bit, but I do find it easier to get things started with my hands. Getting some good liquid down in there now. It's getting there. You can see the volume has really come down. It was full to the top, and we are half that now. I'm going to rinse the green kraut off my hands, and then we're going to massage the purple kraut while the green kraut rests for another 15 or so minutes. Okay, let's move on to the purple. Let's see what we have here. Here's the glisten. You see that? I can see the moisture on this now. It's really starting to come out. Okay, we're going to let this sit for another 15 minutes or so and get back to our green cabbage. So there's our brine. Just let that sit, soak in. I have another mess to clean up. This is looking and feeling really good. Let's take a look at the brine down in here now. That's a nice amount of brine. We'll get more out of it as well and put it in the jar and start using the kraut pounder. And I think we're ready to do that with the green cabbage. Let me get a funnel out. Let's see what the pounder is going to do for us. All right, quite a bit of liquid now. Let's keep stuffing it in there. I want to make sure that I leave plenty of room in the jar because I want to put the cabbage leaf cover on it. And I also want to get my fermentation weight in there. So let's make sure we can get this pounded down in there. This is sufficient room. Look at that. We have plenty of brine now. I think I'm going to stick here, and let's get a cabbage leaf in. I want to kind of get this wedged underneath the shoulders here of the jar. Put one more piece in there. All right, now let's see if we get enough brine coverage when we put this in there. Yes. Perfect. Gonna move that little piece of cabbage out of the way. Okay. So that is perfect. Can you see that the cabbage stops here? And then the brine goes all the way up and over. There's nothing floating around in here. All the cabbage is below those cabbage leaves that we added. And the weight holding it below the brine line. Okay. Now, let's see if I have enough. I have a little pint out here. I think I'll just do what I can with this pint, get as much as I can in here. So my 3-pound cabbage is probably going to be a quart plus about half a pint. I don't think I'm going to be too badly off here. All right. Now, let's pound it. Yeah, 1.5 pint is about what I'm going to get out of a 3-pound cabbage. And that was just as easy as can be. Plenty of cabbage here. I don't have any shoulders to tuck this one in, so I may just add some extra cabbage. I don't think any little bits can get up through there. Let's see what happens when I put the weight on. Now that one is looking really good. All right, let's see if this one has come far enough already. With some pounding in the jar, this one's going to be all right. I expect to get a quart out of this one. This is 2 pounds. A little more volume than there was in the green cabbage. I think we ought to be just about right. So let's bring in a clean quart over here. This one out of the way. Oh, let's do some pounding. There's some brine coming up in there. So let's add some brine from here. And then pound a little bit more. Now you can see we're getting some decent coverage. Okay. I'm just going to pound for a couple of minutes here because I do want to be sure that I am covering the cabbage leaf that I'll put in here with the brine and the weight that I'm going to put in here. So let's make sure that I have plenty for that. Just a little extra will get me there. All right, I think we're good. I'm going to take one of the outer leaves that I pulled from the head of cabbage. Tuck it under the shoulders of the jar. Here we go. Now, see how it does with the weight. Looks like excellent coverage. Nothing is floating. Put on our pickle pipe. Just like that. Okay, so there we have it. 3 jars of health. So this is our red cabbage. You can see that the cabbage comes to about here, and then the rest is brine. It looks fantastic. It's a beautiful color. Now it is going to get a little dull as it ferments. There's our green cabbage. This is the quart. So I started with 3 pounds of the green cabbage, 2 pounds of the red cabbage or purple cabbage. So everything is below the cabbage leaf that's in there, and the brine is up over the weight. So everything is safe in there. Same thing with this one. This one really made about a 1/2 pint. You can see the level down in here. So what I'm going to do with these is put them on a little quarter baking sheet with a towel underneath, set them in my small appliance closet that I have so that they can stay relatively undisturbed. I will check on them every day. In the first week, we'll start to see some bubbles. That'll be, I think it's carbon dioxide. Could be wrong on that, but I think it's carbon dioxide. This starts bubbling up, and that's just fine. That's exactly what we should see. And that'll go on for probably a couple weeks, maybe as many as 3 weeks. And I really like my sauerkraut about 21 days in fermentation. You could go another week after that. You could even go to 30 days if you want. You can go as far as you want. But at some point, that flavor is going to tip for you, and you're going to be over the edge of funkiness that you may be looking for, or sourness, or you just may be past where you really want it to be so that it's something that you actually want to eat every day. So that is where we are. Now, in terms of eating this, David will most especially want it on hot dogs, sausages, corned beef sandwiches. I imagine we'll be making maybe some turkey Reubens after Christmas. So I'm excited about that. I like it on pretty much anything. If I have a turkey wrap or something, I love to put it on there. There's still, I find, a little bit of crunch after 21 days. You start to really lose most of the crunch after 30 days. So that's probably why 21 days is my kind of sweet spot for it. But I'm excited about it. I hope that this will help you if you decide to make this to keep you healthy and well through the holidays. And I hope that you have a wonderful holiday period. And I hope you have family coming in, or you're going to visit with family, or they're just all gathering together wherever you are. So thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.